Practically all of my information comes from the archival sources. Testimonies of survivors have been collected by various research institutions, both in America and in Israel, and I accessed them too, accessed files of the Righteous of the Nations, and oral interviews, and also written interviews. I did talk to some survivors, but I don't think that it was a major kind of source for me, because the body of information which was collected by the previous generation of researchers is just so huge that I don't think the interviews with the still living people would add much to it. Now, but the archives are important. Let me explain what it was, because archives were closed. This is a stupid Soviet kind of legacy, right? And what happened after the closing years of World War II and shortly after World War II, that when Romanians withdrew from Transnistria as well as from Bessarabia and Bukovina, they tried to take all local archives from them, from the local administrative bodies that existed during was then evacuated them into Romania. But when the Soviets came, they confiscated them. They searched Romanian archives, and their policy was anything which would relate to the period of occupation, to the territories that the Soviets now considered theirs, should be kept in their territories. And so they moved them in the Soviet Union. But the problem was that the archivists quite often didn't know Romanian or knew it insufficiently. So the documents were eventually cataloged but the descriptions sometimes lacked precision and finesse, and they kept them in the archives in Odessa and in Chisinau and in Chernivtsi, and some of them also in Moscow. But the access was very limited, so it's only in the 90s that they opened these archives. Unfortunately, for example, in Odessa, the archive is in a very old, basically falling apart building, and well, very, very small reading room. So there are problems, and there are still problems with accessing files of the Ukrainska Служба Безпеки, that is Ukrainian security service, which houses Soviet KGB, former KGB materials. So there are problems, but with all of this, in Romania it is better, but because Romanians try to hide their archives from the Soviet searching teams of archivists, right, who were trying to confiscate their files, they lost track of some of those materials. And so they're now trying to find them and bring them back, and so it's a long process. Luckily, however, US Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. had a very extensive program, has had a very extensive program from the 1990s of identifying archival materials from all over the world, including in Moldova, Ukraine, and Romania, related to the Holocaust, right? But they have a very wide definition of what are the materials that relate. And so they searched those archives and ordered microfilm copies of those materials, and now they are stored in Washington. The access is easier for researchers there. The more so that it's now digitization, it's easier to make copies.